Islamophobia is a really strong word, and now I feel like more than ever it's just become a norm.
A group of drunk men walked over to us and said, "Oh, are you sure under those jackets of yours you don't have any bombs or anything?"
And I think British rules, Britishness needs to come back.
In 2011, Baroness Sayeeda Warsi, the first Muslim woman to serve in the British cabinet, said that Islamophobia had passed the dinner party test. 13 years later, pro-Palestine protesters are smeared as sympathising with Hamas, Sadiq Khan is accused as palling around with Islamists, and both major parties have serious issues with Islamophobia. Since October 7th, Islamophobic attacks in the UK have risen by 600%. Muslims remain a reliable punching bag in the UK, a convenient other to vilify when the chips are down. It's easier to blame pesky brown people than it is to sort out the economy. Which explains why so many mainstream politicians are doing just that. I want to meet the people facing the brunt of it. So, I've come to Tower Hamlets, the most Muslim place in the UK. Bengali Muslim workers started to move here in big numbers in the 60s, and as more settled, the community faced serious racism. Racial tensions were so bad that the National Front moved their headquarters to Shoreditch in 1978, the same year that a Bengali man called Altab Ali was murdered by 3 teenagers. 50 years on, Tower Hamlets is a melting pot community. Hipsters that are concerned that their eye-watering rent is eating into their Birkenstock budget live upstairs from 75-year-old market stall traders. But the high proportion of Muslims living here makes it a lightning rod for culture war discourse, with a Tory MP recently declaring it a no-go zone.
So when I grew up in Essex, and that was a bit brutal because my family was the only Muslim family in the area. So back then, my parents were really religious. My mum wears a headscarf. I used to wear a headscarf. I got the classic Voldemort comments, people pulling my scarf. Yeah, like a lot of it.
So as soon as we walked into the restaurant, a group of drunk men walked over to us and said, "Oh, are you sure under those jackets of yours you don't have any bombs or anything?"
I know my brother had it a lot worse. He went to a Christian school, and this is actually quite brutal. They used to pull glue in his hair and lock him up in a cupboard, the kids in the school, and the teachers didn't know how to handle it because back then, so my friend is a teacher in a school and they get taught about how to deal with it now, but especially in early 2000s, not at all. And post 9/11, it was brutal.
Yeah.
And then 7/7 happened and it got even worse. My dad, if we go for an airport, we're always stopped. Always stopped. We're the random search. And people say it doesn't happen, but it does.
Do you ever feel unsafe as a Muslim woman in the UK?
Mostly no. I grew up here. Yeah. And obviously I'm going to grow old here as well. I don't really feel unsafe, but yes, in some areas, in some places, depending on who, most of the time we feel safe, but in some places it does feel a bit worrying, especially when whenever there's a new news about terrorism going on. During that time, there are a few unhappy situations that goes around neighbourhood. During that time, yes, but if the news isn't really blowing things up in a negative way, then I think normally we're okay outside.
We're always stopped. Always stopped. We're the random search. And people say it doesn't happen, but it does. It's really blunt now. There's a type of, I don't know, Islamophobia is a really strong word because it's phobia, but exists. And now I feel like more than ever, it's just become a norm, I feel like, to behave this way towards certain groups of people.
You used to live in this area many years ago.
Yeah.
What was it like back then?
A lot different. Yeah, a lot different, yeah. It was more English, a lot more English people. Yeah, it used to be quite nice along here. Yeah, a lot of Jewish people. But I've just come to visit my brother in the hospital, and I can't believe how it's changed.
Yeah.
I work in a school, there's Muslim, non-Muslims, Christian, Jewish, Buddhist. It's a mixed community with mixed community children and staff members, and we're happy with our differences. We try to find the similarities within the differences, and we get along very well. And that's not shown in the news. In the news, it's always shown either there are a lot of Islamophobic going on, or either a lot of terrorism going on. And most of the time, if something negative does happen, and if a Muslim person is behind it, it's labelled as terrorism. But when it's a non-Muslim doing it, then it's named under a certain type of a crime. But the word terrorism isn't really put in there.
I mean, from my point of view, what politicians do and everything is doing, I think there is a big responsibility of the Muslim community in that, because we have tried to change the British that, you have that, something about Britain. It is totally different now. It's nothing like Britain before. It's everybody's like doing their own thing and they want to adapt everything. So this country's own culture has disappeared. And I think this is something that needs to come back if we want to be, feeling the important. Because, if the British society changed to other countries' rules and religious expectation and everything, then you cannot expect the Britain politicians to be British to you.
Yeah. So this is interesting. So you think Britain has been too accommodating almost?
Yes, it is. And I think this multicultural everything coming into it has made it like the society has changed to everybody's adaptations. Like everybody's doing their own thing, schools and everything, they're like having different kind of holidays, everybody's having different kind of their own adaptations. And I think if you go to Tower Hamlets Council and you want to speak to someone about before I would go to council and I would see that they would expect it and they understand me, but now they will be like, oh, in your culture it happens, so adapt to it.
Right.
That's what you get.
There's also a discussion when people talk about British politics. People talk about like British Muslims as a homogenous group.
Yeah.
People talk about like, oh, Starmer might lose the Muslim vote over Palestine or whatever. When people talk about like British Muslims as like a bloc or an entity, what do you think about that?
I think it's again, this is like education. So there's different types of Muslims. Obviously, there's Sunni Shias and those groups, and it's also mixed a bit more into culture. Like maybe some people disagree with me, but I think like some Iranian. So the Iranian Muslims, like Shia Muslims, are a lot different. Not a lot different, but they're in their own community than like a Sunni Pakistani community. And I feel like it just, especially now that there's generational Muslims. So maybe there was a generation of a lot of immigration is just a lot now because of planes and whatever. Just the world we live in, the 21st century, and now we have generational Muslims, which are British Muslims. They grew up. They are just as British English behaving as you or whoever.
At the end of the day, I feel that's about propaganda. Like, if I was in the UK and I'm getting fed stories about Muslims and Islam, and I have no direct links to Islam itself and I don't know any facts, I get it's gonna be a one-sided story. But obviously it's a bit difficult for us to comprehend why people don't see the way we see things. So for example, peace. Islam, like he said, is a peaceful religion, but again, I just feel like it comes down to propaganda and what people are being fed.
And at the end of the day, minority shouldn't present the majority. Just because 2% of people do wrong doesn't mean 98% of people do bad.
I don't know if you saw this, but recently there was a senior politician who described places like Tower Hamlets as no-go zones. What do you make of that?
Yeah, see, it's another stereotype. East London is just full of Asians. Typical comments like, "Oh, go back to your hometown. You don't belong here." But yeah, see, stuff like that doesn't affect because we know our rules and our rights as well. So it's one of them ones where we Tower Hamlets is like another place for Muslims to come together. Like for example, we just prayed Jummah as a uni. You wouldn't think like back then there'd be a place for prayer. So it's also our home now as well.
I wouldn't say it's a no-go area.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think? Do you think
No,
it's...
I don't think so. No, I'm here, haven't I? So
Yeah.
we're here.
I don't think it's a no-go area. But it's just changed. It's just completely different.
Yeah.
It's not for English people along here, is it? There's no English clothes or... It's all for Muslims, really. You couldn't shop along here, really, an English person.
I mean, at the end of the day, at 12 a.m. you can walk down Bethnal Green Road and nothing will ever happen to you. Unless you have a problem with someone, someone else can have a problem with you. If you don't have a problem and you're getting about things in your own way, you're more than welcome to walk down the road. definitely not happen anyway.
But coming into the Asian community and multicultural community, a lot of the time I feel I am isolated because of a lot of people judging. A lot of people will look at you, your own cultural people or community people will look at you and they just make comments or they judge you. So it feels like you're more isolated in your own community.
What comments would they make?
Basically, they will look at and make a comment like, how you look, how you appear. A woman, as a woman, you should be having more restrictions than men. So I really feel that, it is very difficult to live in a Muslim community than a non-Muslim community. My children are, as a Muslim, they're practicing, but they sometimes, a lot of time feel they're being judged because my daughter, she's 14 years old. She goes to all Bengali, Asian community school, girls' school, Muslim school. So a lot of the time she doesn't wear a scarf or she doesn't wear a scarf. So she feels she's being judged, her appearance being judged. She feels she's been pushed on a side and a lot of people say, oh, you're not a Muslim. And so they judge your intention and they look at your appearance rather than you yourself.
I don't think it's a no-go area. It's lovely. It's round the corner. I mean, a lot of rich people moved in around here. So it can't be a no-go area. Bethnal Green and Hackney, they're lovely areas,
I think people try and discredit the pro-Palestinian movement by describing it as that's a Hamas march. This is like, instead of recognizing for what it is, people try to discredit it by associating it with like radical Islam. What do you make of that tactic by politicians or people
I think it's cowardly. I think it's so cowardly. It's such an obvious scape. If you look at history of politics and whatever, scapegoats have always existed in every type of political movement, in any type of spin doctor. Like the case when it comes to Palestine, it's not even about that anymore. Like at all. Of course, the Muslim. It's not because they're Muslims, because they come from backgrounds when they see these people, they identify with them more. This is my point of view. Of course, when you're Muslims, you look out for your community, and obviously lots of Palestinians are Muslim, but it's not that. It's just because they identify with it. We're like. In the Middle East, a lot of Middle Eastern generationally here still have that trauma. Like there's a lot of like I have this as an Iranian that's grown up here. I have a lot of survivor's guilt, and so many Muslims have that. They're not even Muslims. Anyone of that background, and that's why they feel strongly for it. Because when they see a picture of someone being killed on the news, it looks like that uncle, auntie, dad, whatever, more like than it for you, for example, and it's more of a hard response towards it.